Okay, we're talking today about, well, technically I should probably read the title of the worksheet for today for those following along at home. And it is, we're talking about P1/P4 worksheet. P1/P4. Now, some of you are the organized types who actually keep good notes. This is the first day that I'm talking about notes, and I want to emphasize something. I only know one person in my entire life who has got an A in every single high school and college class they ever took, and I asked what their secret was, and they said that they reviewed their notes every night for like 20 minutes or so every night. What did they learn in all their classes? Just like the main points. Okay? You want a straight A in everything you ever take? This is the kind of thing that really helps a lot because it helps set memories of what the teacher taught that was important. Whenever I tell you something that's really important, I'm going to ask you to put a star by it. A big star, like however you want to make stars, but put a big star by something that's important whenever I say, okay, this is an important one, but put a star by it. That way you can go back and look at the stuff that was really important. Because not everything I say is going to be really important. All right, the next thing is you should save your notes and be able to look back at them, right? And why not save the note with the title of the worksheet for today? Because it'll kind of go together naturally, right? So P1/P4 would be a logical title to use. All right, so now let's talk about intervals. If you would agree that the ages in here would be between age 13 and age 19, and let's say I knew for sure there was a ninth grader in class, or sorry, a 19-year-old in class. I'm going to put a darkened in last circle. And then this 13, I knew there weren't any actual 13-year-olds, but there were like 13.2-year-olds, like people that had just past age 13. Now, technically, of course, we call them a 13-year-old until they hit 14. But I'm going to put an empty circle on that, just implying nobody's exactly 13, but some are a little older than 13. This in between, right there, that's a graph way to say between 13 and 19. Do you get that? Now, the Precalc way to write that is going to be 13, comma 19, bracket here, parenthesis there. That's called an interval. And you are going to give many, many answers like this in Precalc. Any questions so far? All right, I'd like you to take a situation I tell you, and I'd like you to make me an interval like this for it. The daycare says that they're only licensed to take people from age 9 to 11 inclusive. They're only allowed to have people between ages 9 and 11 at their daycare. So it must be like an after-school program or something. When I said inclusive, what did you think that meant? Here's 9 to 11. I know you all wrote that down, at least I hope you did. Okay, then what does inclusive mean? Include it, and therefore, do you think I should parentheses around it, or do you think I should put brackets around it? Brackets. Very good. As opposed to parentheses, which would technically mean you couldn't have anybody who is exactly 9 or anybody who's exactly 11. So if you wrote it this way, again, ages is kind of a funny thing to use for this because usually you call a person 9 until they hit 10. But math-wise, do you get that 9.2 would be in this interval? Do you get that 9 would not be in this interval? Okay, so when you put a parenthesis around it, you're saying not this number, but all the numbers past it. All right. So what do I mean when I say this? 13, 21, bracket, I'll actually go like this, bracket, and a curve on this one. Is 13 included in the group? Yes. Is 21 included in the group? How about 20.99? Is that included? Yes. Okay, good. That's an interval. That's the first thing we need to get straight. All right, next thing. I can write that in different ways. I can write it like this. X is greater than or equal to 3. Would you make me an interval for that? And I know you're thinking, but where does it stop? It doesn't. How do you write an interval for that? You always need a comma and a starting number and an ending number. And they always have to be in order from smallest to biggest. So this is the smallest it can be. And can it be 3? Yes, so therefore a bracket. And can it, well, it goes forever. What do we use for forever in math? Infinity. How many of you had it this way with infinity? Good. Now what do you put on the end of it? A bracket or a parenthesis? A parenthesis. Because why? Because technically you can't ever get to infinity. Think about that. If you ever got to infinity, then you'd have to add one more and you wouldn't have really been at infinity. Okay, so infinity is a concept. Always use a parenthesis on infinity. All right, how about, what does this mean? That means all the numbers that go from all the way up to what? To 12. Does it include 12? Yes. All right, that's an interval. Now notice negative infinity is again a concept. It's like going below 0. Like in Minnesota, it never gets to negative infinity, but last winter it was pretty close. Awful. I sure hope we don't have another winter like that. Okay, let's move on past intervals to, hold on just a second here. We already talked about this in our prerequisites unit, so hopefully this is going to be pretty easy for you. But if I knew that something went through the point 3, 7, and I had a slope of 9, would you write the equation for that for me? We told you this was going to be important. Now, some of you are going to wonder, do I have to solve for y? No. Y minus what? Equals m, which is times what? There we go. Raise your hand if you had it right. Okay, good. Now, if I do the same exact thing, except I give you an equation, and I say, I'm not telling you the slope, but I'm telling you it's parallel to this equation. The slope isn't just jumping right out at me, but if I rearrange it a little bit, it wouldn't be that hard. By saying it's parallel to 3x plus y equals 12, what's the slope on 3x plus y equals 12? Subtract 3x from both sides. Y equals negative 3x plus 12. What's the slope? Negative 3. See, when I solve it like that, it's easy. So that's what you have to do. You have to take this and solve it, and then you'll know that the slope is negative 3. So now really it's point this and slope negative 3. It just takes a second to find the slope. All right, next one. Instead of parallel, what if I say perpendicular to? There's a symbol for parallel, and surprisingly enough, it's two parallel lines running next to each other. Okay? Perpendicular to is like that. It's two lines where they run and make right angles to each other. What if I want it perpendicular to that equation now? I would not use negative 3 for my slope. You remember what to do? Yes, the opposite reciprocal. I like to say opposite just because sometimes if you say negative, people think you always use an answer that's negative. The opposite reciprocal. So the opposite of negative 3 and the reciprocal of negative 3. So what is it? 1/3. That's the slope I should use. Why did I call it m? Because the m is the shortcut for slope. All right. So now, judging by what I just told you, I now have the point negative 4, 8, and I want to be perpendicular to, not parallel, perpendicular to this equation. Write me the equation that will go through the point negative 4, 8 and be perpendicular to that equation I just wrote. First job, plus 2x plus 2x. Y equals 2x plus 12. Your equation should look something like this. That's not the right answer. I'm saying it look kind of like that. if you've got the right answer. Okay, it's not right. I'm going to change the numbers here. And I want you to turn yours my way, and I'll tell you if you did it right or not. I'm going to pause for a second while I check for answers.